All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Chuck Caisley. That's Caisley. Chuck Caisley. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for Evergy. I think everybody'd like a little bit of an update on the storm and the restoration efforts. So I think everybody knows that yesterday afternoon, a major storm system started in western Kansas, moved across Kansas, and then ultimately hit the Kansas City metropolitan area as well as outside Kansas City, east of Kansas City in Missouri. And Evergy's a 5-year-old company. It was formed 5 years ago between Westar and KCP&L. This is the largest storm we have had, the largest number of outages we've had since we became a company. It started to hit Salina, Kansas first in the afternoon yesterday, moved its way through Topeka and Lawrence, and then, like I said, ended up in the Kansas City metropolitan area where a significant amount of damage was done. We've got hundreds of poles down. We've got trees everywhere, and that is what's causing the outages. We know that there were between 80 and 100 mile an hour straight line winds by the time it got to the Kansas City metropolitan area. We also have a couple of unconfirmed reports of tornadoes in more rural areas, cyclonic winds that actually took out one of our transmission lines, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Throughout the storm, about 240,000 customers were impacted throughout the time the storm was in our service territory. At one time, we had about 186,000 customers off of their electricity, which would be the peak amount at one time. As we sit here today, a little past 10:30 in the morning on Saturday, we are down to just over 80,000 customers still without power. That means better than 50%, better than half have been restored. But it's going to be a long road at this point. The restoration is definitely going to stretch through today and probably into tomorrow and possibly even into the first part of the new week. Again, we've got hundreds of poles down. We've got trees everywhere. This is a big restoration. Right now, currently, we have around 2,000 employees working on power restoration. That includes line crews, that includes folks that are out looking for damage. That's our call center personnel, over 2,000 people working. And by this evening, we have asked neighboring utilities in Colorado, Missouri, and in Iowa to see if they would send crews down here. Every time there's a storm that causes a big power outage somewhere else, we send crews. It's called mutual assistance, and those crews are now headed our way. By this evening, we expect to have at least another 1,000 personnel on site restoring tonight and beginning tomorrow, and we will add crews from there. This will be a 24/7 operation until everybody is back on, but I would ask for people to try and be as patient as possible. We know it's warming up. It's going to create difficult conditions for some folks. We're doing the best that we can. I mentioned earlier that we had a transmission line that was affected by this. I think most folks know we've got a nuclear plant by the name of Wolf Creek. The Wolf Creek station had a transmission line, a very large transmission line, a 345 kilowatt transmission line that had 4 or 5 spans of transmission taken out. As a result of that, we were forced to do a controlled power down of the Wolf Creek nuclear station. So that's now running at about 60% of its normal capacity. Again, that was a pre-planned process that we executed whenever we lose a transmission line to that facility. It is stable, there's no danger to it, but as a precautionary and a pre-planned response, we have taken and reduced power at Wolf Creek. That line is currently being worked on, and we expect to have that up this afternoon, which hopefully means we can take the the Wolf Creek nuclear operating station back to full power later today or tomorrow. As of right now, we don't have any concerns on having enough electricity to get to the rest of the customers that we have. And like I said, restoration is going to continue 24/7 until this is done, with us adding personnel as we go. I think the only other thing I would ask folks to bear in mind, you can see the work that's going on behind us here. This is very dangerous work. So we would ask that members of the public, I know when you see Evergy trucks, the first thing you want to do is come up and ask questions, but please stay away from line crews as they're working to restore power. You can see that they're all wearing safety equipment. They're all trained. There's no way for us to explain all the different dangers that exist. So please stay away from line crews. Not only is it safer for you, but it's also going to hinder and slow down restoration for everybody if we keep having people come up to them and try and talk to them. So that's kind of the situation on the ground here today. If people have questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions now.
Do you guys have priority when you consider where to start first with the restoration? Is it the main streets? Is it neighborhoods? Is it side streets? And then is it specific to neighborhoods as well, or cities?
Absolutely. There is a priority in the way that we work to restore power. The first thing that we do is we work on critical customers. So think about hospitals, think about public safety, think about wastewater and water treatment plants. Things of those nature are always first. We also want to make sure that if there's wires down and electricity still on, that we get those wrapped up. So that's our first priority. After that, we do a full service territory blanket damage assessment, and we start working the largest outages first. So the outage you see behind you has somewhere in the vicinity of 2,000 customers that are impacted by it. As a result, that means it's a priority. We have what's called backbone, and that the backbones are just like the skeletal system in your body, right? It's central. Everything off the back can't work if it's not working. And then we start working what's called laterals. Think of those as ribs. And then we keep going down in level of outages. So smaller outages generally get worked a little later in the process. This happens to be a very large one with around 2,000 customers impacted. So we're working it right now.
Do you guys expect this to have any impact on people's bills at the end of the month?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, fortunately for customers, unfortunately for us, I think it'll reduce bills because there'll be a couple days where people, have hot weather and they're not using their air conditioning and other powers. But no, I mean, we have enough power for everybody else, and so it shouldn't impact anybody else, and it shouldn't impact anybody else's bills.
For any customers that want to get in touch with you guys, how can they reach out to you right now? I know
So,
you guys are probably inundated, but
yeah, so the best way is to go on our website, which is evergy.com. We've got outage maps there where you can report your outage. I know sometimes people feel a little weird about that because they report it and then they're unsure whether or not we get it. Rest assured, we do get it and we know about it when they report their outage, or they can call our call centers. If you're in the central part of our service territory in Kansas, that's 1-800-LIGHT-KS or Kansas. And if you're in the metropolitan area here or on the Missouri side, it's 1-800-LIGHT-KC. You can call the call center. They will eventually get to you. But as you can imagine, we're having very high volumes of calls right now. So the best way is just to go on our outage map on our website, evergy.com, and report it there.
as the workers are out and about over the weekend, are there any challenges that are unique to this storm? Are there things that are getting in the way right now, and what is it?
You know, I think the original challenge was that the storm kind of sat in the service territory for 4 or 5 hours. So even though the storm happened when it was light outside and we could get out and we could assess the damage, by the time the storm left the service territory and it was safe for people to get back up on poles and into trucks and the lightning had moved out, it was dark. And so restoration just goes a little slower at nighttime because you can't see as much and you just got to be that much more cautious about everything that you're doing. But no, I mean, right now, the skies are clear. It's not incredibly hot yet, and all that helps.
Do you guys have any tips for families that are sitting inside the homes without AC today as it gets up to 85, 90?
Yeah, I know that's really rough. And we actually have some of my family members are out too, and they keep calling me and asking. So I can totally relate. You know, what I would say is a lot of people are going to be restored today. So if you can not open your freezer, not open your air conditioner, your food will stay fresh longer. And just open up the windows or get outside in what's a pretty nice day. Actually, it's generally going to be cooler outside. There's a little breeze. But other than that, just patience. We know this is tough. We really do. And we are, you know, by the end of the day, we'll have thousands of people working on this 24/7. A little bit of patience, maybe a little bit of good humor, and for those who run out of battery on their mobile phones, maybe that's a great opportunity to spend a little more quality time with family. So,
yeah. How are traffic side of things? Because I know a lot of the lights are out and it's causing some traffic issues in intersections.
yeah, that's a great point. So traffic, particularly in this part of Kansas City, could be a little difficult right now. I just went down 87th Street Parkway. There are a lot of lights out there. There's a lot of lights out in the Lenexa, Prairie Village, Old Leawood area. I would ask people to be very cautious. You know, if you come up to an intersection and the lights are dark, you need to be very cautious as you approach and think of that as a four-way stop. And there's going to be some traffic. Many of those lights are fed off of backbones, and so they should be coming up and recirculating and starting again soon. Do you have some questions?
Yeah, so you said your company is fairly new. You said it's been in business for about 5 years now. It's the biggest storm you guys have dealt with. Now that you guys have dealt with a storm this size and you know what you guys need moving forward, what do you think are changes that you guys are going to implement to handle a storm like this?
Yeah, so great question. Evergy is 5 years old, but it's a combination between two companies that served this area for 130 years prior to that. So on the KCP&L side, we had about a 500,000 customer storm about 15 years ago or so, so a 500,000 customers out. On the Westar side, similar. So we were actually ready for this. We could see this come in. So we held all our line crews. We held all our meter personnel so they could go out and do damage assessment. We held over everybody in the call centers because their shifts would naturally be ending between 4 and 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. We held everybody in because we knew that this had the potential to be difficult. We also started calling our neighboring utilities yesterday afternoon as well. Obviously, they weren't willing, particularly the ones east of us, weren't willing to release their crews until they saw how the storms impacted their area. Bottom line is there's always things to learn in a storm like this, and we'll do an after action kind of walk down everything. But right now, like I said, we've got more than 2,000 people working on this within less than 24 hours of the storm hitting, and we're more than 50% restored. So we're making good progress so far.
One more question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you can get one more. You can go ahead. Oh, okay. Our web team just sent in a question for me.
Sure.
The text messages that your clients have been getting, the outage updates.
Yep.
How accurate are those estimates right now? Because somebody from our station had one saying that it was going to be restored by 11 p.m., 7 a.m., still without power. And so how reliable are those?
So they are reliable, but the situation on the ground changes. So let me give you a great example. What we're working on behind you right now, or behind me right now, is replacing a pole that has snapped, and then we'll put the line back up and we'll re-energize it. That'll take 2 or 3 hours. So if people are on this circuit that are served in this neighborhood or businesses, we will send a text notification that says, 3 to 6 hours, we think it's going to be restored. What we can't tell is that if there are people that have additional damage specific to their area, it might impact their service line to their house. It might impact a subset of about the 2,000 customers that we're working on restoring right here. We can't tell whether or not there might be an additional problem down the line. And so sometimes what will happen is out of this 2,000, we'll get 1,500 or 1,600 restored within the time frame that we said, but then there'll be additional work we have to do. And so the situation changes on the ground. So we try and make them as accurate as possible, but the situation is very fluid, particularly in an outage situation like this, where at one time we had 186,000 people off.
And this is not my opinion, I'm just reading comments from online. I guess people are, a little bit upset or frustrated with the price increases you guys are trying to implement, and saying your response times are not matching up with that. What would you have to say to people who are making these kind of comments?
Well, I would say in our service territory until this year, on the Kansas side, we hadn't had a rate increase in 5 years, and on the Missouri side, it had been 4 years. We now have, we're in Kansas asking for a rate increase, but if you look back over that last 5 years, it's well underneath the level of inflation during that time period, which means we're doing better than property taxes. We're doing better than sales taxes in many places. We're doing better than water, sewer, natural gas. So nobody likes a rate increase. We understand that. And particularly with some of the inflation we've seen, this can be a tough time. Having said that, I would also say that our response time and reliability has generally improved over those 5 years. On a storm like this, as a larger company that's still headquartered here and still focused right here and doesn't have any other area to go work on, we have a lot more resources now to throw at something like this. So what might have been a 6 or 7 day restoration in the past should be, a lot less. So again, we know just like outages, that frustrates people. Rate increases frustrate people too. At the end of the day, those rate increases are for things like what we see right behind us. They are for the systems, keeping the systems up so that to the extent possible when weather like this hits, as little damage is done as possible.
And sorry, you may have mentioned this in the beginning, so sorry to be repetitive.
No worries.
Something you already mentioned, but how long are you expecting it to take to the maximum amount of days?
It's really hard to tell at this point just because this is the first full day that we've been out working this. We know that there's about 80,000 people out right now, which is a large outage. More troubling is the amount of poles snapped and the amount of wind damage to trees. There's a significant amount of trees down. We've got over 1,000 vegetation management or tree trimmers out just working to clean trees and debris off the lines. And many people worry, so, well, maybe if you trim trees more, you wouldn't get as many trees in the line. If you go up and down this area, you're going to see entire trees that have snapped. Some of them snap and go away from the lines. Some of them have been blown right into the lines. The bottom line is these winds were strong enough that it took down poles that didn't have any trees on them. So this was a big storm. It was a nasty storm. It sat in this area for a while. In terms of how long we take, we know it's going to go into tomorrow, and I would say it's likely going to go into Monday, but you're going to see a significant amount of restoration today. I bet you we get another.
You say to someone who is a bit panicky about something they need, like an oxygen tank, what would you say to those customers who are kind of freaking out that it might take days?
Yep. So we have a medical list that we maintain of customers who need electricity for a medical condition. You can find how to get on that list on our website. So I would encourage people to go there and enroll if they haven't already. For those customers who are enrolled in it, we're aware of that, and we try to the best extent possible to help prioritize their restoration. It's not a guarantee that we can get it done quicker, but it lets us know that there's an issue, and if we can, we do. And I would encourage those customers, if they're getting to a point where they're really having concerns, to call our call centers and talk to somebody there.
You mentioned hospitals were first priority. Were there any major hospitals that were affected?
Yeah, in the Kansas City metropolitan area yesterday, we had 3 hospitals that were without power for a little while. All of those were restored within the first 3 or 4 hours of the storm clearing the service territory. Pardon?
Which hospitals?
I can't go into which hospitals. They generally don't like that, and it's not public information. But there were 3 hospitals right in the metropolitan area that had issues.
That's it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.